Hello and welcome to this web-based training about safe food handling. As someone who will be involved in the operation of an event selling or serving food to the public, it is important you follow fundamental safe food handling practices, including attention to your own personal health and hygiene and cleaning, as well as sanitizing items used. It is important because you don't want to make anyone sick. This training has been designed with content from the College of Human Sciences and with input from the Office of Risk Management. The College of Human Sciences Extension has developed several publications that are useful when planning and managing your food events, and Iowa State Extension manages a website with lots of helpful information. Many of these will be noted in this presentation. Our hope is that at the end of this training you will understand why this training is required and be able and willing to practice safe food handling and cleaning procedures. The good news is that all of the practices related to safe food handling also result in a quality product. For example, one food safety principle is to keep hot foods hot. Well, that makes sense because no one likes to have a cold hamburger. This training includes this video for you to review, in addition to a number of specific documents included in the online training materials. This video first concentrates on why food safety is important, and the second part addresses what to do to make sure safe food is served at your event. Demonstration of your knowledge will be tracked by successful completion of a short quiz at the end of this training. We hear more about food safety because our food system has changed in recent years to one that is more centralized and global. An incident in one manufacturing site can result in illnesses across the country. In many retail food services, there is a high turnover of staff. Often, new employees are performing tasks without adequate training. Our U.S. population is changing, with more people fitting into at-risk categories of either young children, under the age of 5, older Americans, over the age of 65, or those with compromised immune systems, meaning that they are greater risk of experiencing a foodborne illness. Iowa has a high number of people who are over the age of 65 and therefore at greater risk of becoming ill from improperly prepared food. Finally, it is important to remember that pathogens continually adapt for the purposes of survival. As a result of adaptations, new strains of disease-causing microorganisms can emerge. With the great number of food events that occur at Iowa State each year, it is important for us to consider many factors in the safety and success of these events for the organizers and for the consumers. Here is some background. Iowa State University wants student groups to stay involved with the food events they are hosting, but ISU must have some oversight. Remember, when you are working a food event, you are responsible for making sure food is prepared and served properly so that no one gets sick. A headline about people getting sick from a student-run food event at an Iowa State event would not be good news. Foodborne illness does happen, and not always to someone else. Each year, an estimated 48 million people in the United States become ill from food, and of these, it is estimated 3,000 will die. So those working in food stands do have a responsibility. The FDA Food Code 2013 is the set of regulations the state of Iowa has adopted and enforces. All food services, whether it be a temporary food stand, a college and university dining site, or a restaurant, must follow guidelines in the Food Code 2013. There is a lot of information in the 350 pages of the code. We have collapsed the information into the essential points you need to know for your food stands. If specific information not covered in this presentation is needed, contact the Office of Risk Management. A successful food event doesn't just happen. It takes some organization and planning. Think of it as a business venture. Your student group should designate a person in charge for the event. This is a good management practice. ISU has a process for approval of student organization food events, and it begins with the event authorization process. Your food event may need a temporary food establishment license from the Department of Inspections and Appeals. This depends on the type of food served, amount of preparation, whether food is sold or given away, and the number of days of service. The Office of Risk Management staff can help determine whether this license is needed. Staff at the Office of Risk Management want your food event to be a success, and they can provide resources such as cooking and refrigerator thermometers, or point you in the direction of additional information sources to be sure reasonable care has been taken to prevent a foodborne illness. Showing proof of having provided reasonable care has been used successfully to respond to legal challenges about safety of food. Be sure vendors used to supply food are on the Office of Risk Management's list of approved vendors. It is important to maintain accurate records of who is working at your food event. This information should be written in the worker or volunteer log and submitted to the Office of Risk Management following each event. Many organizations hold the same types of food events each year. Someone else in your organization may have information to share with you about previous events, so it may not be necessary to reinvent the wheel. Information about procurement sources and scheduling of workers is typically recorded, but the health of those workers also needs to be taken into account. Temperature of the foods is another focus area. The remaining portion of this presentation will cover how to provide reasonable care to ensure food is prepared and served safely. Each worker or volunteer has an important role to play in ensuring the safety of prepared and served food. Be sure each person has received training. Don't assume common sense is so common. This is publication N3285. It has most of the information covered in these slides and provides great reminders to your food event workers about how to keep food safe. There are also resources on the last page. All of the extension publications shown in this presentation can be accessed at the ISU Extension store. Go to www.extension.iastate.edu/store and enter the N or PM number in the search box. The 5 main ways that food becomes unsafe were identified through investigations of reported outbreaks. These can be controlled through good planning and work organization. One way is through food procured, whether purchased, donated, or otherwise, from unsafe sources. We also need to monitor the time that certain foods are in the temperature danger zone, which is between 41 and 135 degrees Fahrenheit. Watching worker health and practices can minimize risks from contamination and cross-contamination of foods, as can proper cleaning and sanitizing. These can all be controlled through good planning and work organization. Purchasing food from safe sources is critical, generally buying foods from retail or wholesale sources as listed on ISU's approved vendor list. It is never okay to serve to the public uninspected meats or dairy products. With meats, the processing facility is inspected, but the meat must also receive an inspection. So, typically, locker meat that has been processed in an inspected facility would not be allowed for sale to the public, unless the meat itself has been inspected. See publication PM2047 for more information. On the food sales or service agreement you upload to the event authorization system, you will indicate the source of foods you will be preparing or serving at your food event.
Most foodborne illnesses are transmitted through food in which microorganisms are able to grow rapidly. These foods used to be called potentially hazardous foods, or PHF, but now go by temperature controlled for safety, or TCS. These are usually foods we keep in the refrigerator, such as dairy products, meats, poultry, and eggs. It may surprise you that items such as cooked rice, or sliced melons, or washed leafy greens, or cut tomatoes are also on this list. These foods are also temperature controlled for safety, or TCS. The food code identifies foods illustrated here as potentially hazardous foods. You see some surprises such as sliced melons, alfalfa sprouts, cut tomatoes, and also cooked rice products.
A number of conditions provide an environment in which microorganisms are likely to grow. Foods that are high in protein and have available moisture, a neutral pH environment, and oxygen, as well as sitting at room temperature for a period of time, are all typical characteristics when food can become unsafe. Bacteria grow at exponential rates, so within 2 hours, the number of bacterial cells could have multiplied exponentially. There is no mystery. If a person eats a food item with high levels of disease-causing bacteria, then they are going to get sick. The items pictured here are all foods of concern. While bacteria, yeast, and molds can grow just about anywhere, they are especially likely to be found on foods considered carbohydrates and proteins. While the foods we are most concerned with are those that present conditions for bacterial growth, like the burger and cheese in this photo, we have had some headline outbreaks from other foods, like lettuce and cut tomatoes. And if someone touches the bun with their bare hands that should have been washed, but maybe weren't, or weren't so well, there may be viral cells, such as norovirus or hepatitis A, transferred to the food. Buns or other foods that don't get cooked, so there is not the kill step of cooking which can reduce the levels of bacterial cells, are called ready-to-eat foods. Regulations do not allow bare hand contact with these foods, so gloves, or tongs, or deli tissues should always be used. The 5 main causes of foodborne illness can be controlled if there is attention to personal health and good hygiene of those working at the food event, if time and temperature abuses of those foods we temperature control for safety are avoided, and if foods are protected from contamination by unclean and unsanitized equipment or work surfaces. As you get ready to work a food event, think about your general cleanliness. Pull your hair back, wear clean clothes, trim and clean fingernails. Remember, no nail polish or false nails are allowed, and remove jewelry. Frequently and thoroughly wash your hands. Think about when to wash and how this happens. The list here is pretty clear and sounds easy, but sometimes when we get busy, we don't realize an action was performed that required a hand washing. For instance, if you clear away after someone has finished eating and place the disposable plate in the garbage, you need to wash your hands. In one of our research studies, we did observations in restaurants and found staff should have washed their hands 28 times each hour. That is a lot of hand washing and is likely not going to happen. The solution is to be smart in assigning work duties. One person can take money only, one person can clear only, one person can serve only, etc. Plan accordingly and you'll save time for everyone. Here is why we really push hand washing. The floury stuff growing on the clear gel are microorganisms. This person didn't wash their hands after using the restroom. But even if you did, and the person in front of you didn't, and they touched the faucets or doorknob or something else, you might still have this gunk on your hands. Improper or lack of hand washing causes 26% of all foodborne illnesses. Wash your hands when entering the food event area, even if you just washed them a minute ago. This slide shows the recipe for proper hand washing. Notice there is not a splash and dash technique used. Rather, warm water and soap are lathered onto hands for at least 10 seconds. Then hands are rinsed and dried with a disposable towel. Microorganisms are everywhere. Here we see some growth from the faucet handles. It's best to use a paper towel to turn off the water so that your hands don't get recontaminated. Disposable or paper towels are the best because microorganisms can survive on cloth towels and aprons. In these photos, the man washed his hands properly, but then dried them on his apron. The photo on the top left shows microorganisms from his hand after drying on the apron. The photo on the right shows the microorganisms on the apron itself. Yuck. These photos are part of the Yuck photo gallery at iowafoodsafety.org. No running water at your event? Don't worry, you can still create your own hand washing station with a container of warm or hot water, a drainage container, and soap and paper towels. Think about where hands are washed also. Never wash your hands at a pot and pan sink or a food prep sink. There should be a sink just for hand washing in the food event area. Chemical-based hand sanitizers work for killing some microorganisms, but not all. Norovirus is a big concern, and the sanitizers do not kill the virus. Food event rules do not allow for use of sanitizers as a substitute for hand washing. So have a sink with running water or create your own station. Hand washing is the single most important means of preventing the spread of infection. Gloves are good to have and can be used to handle those ready-to-eat foods, such as hamburger buns. But hands should be washed before putting on clean gloves. Gloves are packed with the clean side out, so if you stick a dirty hand in the box, the clean side of the glove is contaminated. The purple stuff in the picture here is a glow germ type of powder that illustrates the spread of germs. Gloves need to be changed when they get dirty or torn and before you start a new task. This means if you are wearing gloves when putting hamburgers on the grill, you need to take these off and wash your hands before putting on new gloves and assembling the sandwich. Ways to decrease the number of hand washes and glove changes include organizing your work area and work tasks efficiently. So, one person can put hamburgers on the grill while another person assembles the sandwiches. See the flash animation at the ISU Food Safety Project website at iowafoodsafety.org. This extension publication tells what types of gloves are allowed for food services and food stands, how and when to change, and it also gives information about costs. On the last page there is a sample training session that references a short paper and pencil quiz about glove use. It is good to see gloves worn, but not good if they are not worn or changed properly. We make assumptions when we eat at restaurants or other food service facilities. One such assumption is that workers are following correct procedures. Hopefully, the worker handling the melon did indeed wash his hands prior to beginning food preparation, although gloves should also be worn as the melon is a ready-to-eat food. Food service workers should be responsible to do a health status check before working. If someone has a sore throat or fever, or worse, they can't be around food that's being served to others. If you are sick, stay home. Only those approved to work in the food event area and who have had this training should be in the food areas. Otherwise, they present some contamination risks. Here are 2 more helpful publications provided by ISU Extension. You may wish to make copies of them for the food service workers at your event, as they contain great reminders about health and hygiene. Both can be found at the Iowa Food Safety website, iowafoodsafety.org. We will now begin the second portion of the SafeFood 101 web-based training, What to Do, Controls for Operating a Food Event. Once you purchase foods from approved sources, they are in your custody and they are your responsibility. Avoiding temperature abuse means keeping hot foods hot and cold foods cold. Food is time or temperature abused whenever it has been allowed to remain in the temperature danger zone for extended periods of time. The danger zone is between 41 and 135 degrees Fahrenheit. We recommend a maximum exposure time of 2 hours during preparation, display, and service. It is best to use thermometers rather than your finger or tasting to be sure cooking temperatures are accurate. Check with the Office of Risk Management about borrowing a thermometer or purchase one at any retail store. The one shown here costs less than $10. The publication on the right, PM 2083, has photos of different types of thermometers. The one on the left, N3466, has endpoint cooking temperatures. Remember, cooking is an important kill step for harmful bacteria. For cold foods, you might use a cooler at the food event. Use a refrigerator thermometer in the cooler to be sure the temperature does not exceed 41 degrees. During your event, don't open the cooler except when necessary to avoid losing the cold air. To avoid cross-contamination, keep raw, potentially hazardous foods in one cooler, such as hamburger patties, and ready-to-eat foods, such as cut tomatoes and bagged washed lettuce, in another cooler. And yes, cut tomatoes and lettuce are considered TCS foods. Use a thermometer to check cooking temperatures. There are minimum requirements for most meats and poultry, as these are potentially hazardous foods, and the temperature noted must be reached in order to kill most of the harmful bacteria. Most foods should be cooked on site at the food event rather than elsewhere. Baked items are the exception. We have to reach these temperatures when preparing food for the public. If you want a rare hamburger patty at home, that is up to you, but you can't make that call for customers unless they are fully informed. There is a special thin-tip thermometer that must be used for foods less than half an inch thick, such as a hamburger patty. This is the thermometer with the yellow dial in the photo above. The other thermometer has a dimple and a thicker tip. Some food stands may just have bake sale items. It is important to make sure these aren't items that need to be refrigerated, like cream pies, for example. We suggest cookies be pre-wrapped at home. This makes it easier to deal only with purchase units at a set price. Because of allergic reactions some people may have to common allergens, dairy, eggs, nuts, fish or seafood, soybean, and wheat, there has to be a sign posted to inform the consumer whether any of these are ingredients or whether there was potential contact with these in preparation. There should be a record of who prepares what food brought into the food event, just in case. If someone brings in 3 dozen peanut butter cookies, record in a notebook what was brought, when it was delivered, who prepared it, and their contact information. There is a page about allergens on the Food Safety Project page. This is a downloadable poster. There is also a short quiz that can be taken to test yourself on what you know. Extension publication PM 2065 has good information as well. Often, food is prepared or assembled at the food event. Remember, the threats are from contamination and time or temperature abuse. Only keep small amounts of product out of storage and keep raw foods separate from cooked or ready-to-eat items. Also, keep clean and soiled items and hands separate. Establish work zones. Change out cooking and serving utensils and supplies every 2 hours and do a wipe down of counters as often as possible with a clean cleaning cloth. This is the concept of mise en place, which chefs use in their operations, and you may have seen on the Food Network. This is how you might set up a sandwich making station. In these examples, items are taken from packages which have been in contact with unclean surfaces and then placed in clean containers. Or items have been prepared in advance, such as the tomatoes sliced and lettuce washed prior to sandwich assembly. Everyone has a specific task, and the flow of food does not allow for cross-contamination to occur. The module called Do Your Part gives some good ideas on how to work smarter and not harder. You can find it at iowafoodsafety.org. During operational hours and at the end of the day, proper cleaning and sanitizing needs to take place. People expect it, and it keeps pests from being attracted to food debris. Cleaning involves washing and rinsing. This removes any visible food or soil. Sanitizing is the next level in that any microbial populations are at reduced levels. Sterile means there are no microorganisms remaining. Our goal in food services is to have food contact surfaces sanitized. To clean and sanitize effectively, we need to use containers and supplies that are only for these purposes to avoid any chemical contamination of the food from the detergents and sanitizers. Be sure water and sanitizing solutions are changed frequently. It is hard, if not impossible, to clean with dirty water. Also change the cleaning towels often. Disposable towels have many advantages. The stack of cleaning cloths in the bottom photo is not very reassuring. Here are some examples of yuck photos that we mentioned earlier. We recommend water, cleaning and sanitizing solutions, and cleaning cloths be changed with every shift, or at least once every 4 hours. Otherwise, the cleaning action is not effective. More photos like these are available at iowafoodsafety.org. Regulations allow for use of either of two types of chemical sanitizers, those with a chlorine base or quaternary ammonia compounds. Most food events don't have a dish machine, which often uses very hot water as a sanitizing method. We will cover the chemical sanitizers. Regardless of type used, these can be applied from a bucket as a solution or sprayed onto the surface. The water temperature can't be very hot, as that will offset the chemical, and any food debris or soil will also make the chemical not work as well. The amount of chemical used is very important, because if the concentrations are not high enough, it won't do the job, and if the concentrations are too high, it may make the food touched by the surface toxic. So the concentration has to be just right. Chlorine bleach is an inexpensive and easy to find over-the-counter sanitizer. It works well even with hard water. The obvious disadvantages are that it can discolor shirts and aprons, and some people may have a reaction to it. It inactivates quickly, so if you use this type of sanitizer, keep it covered or mix it up at least twice during the day. Solution in a spray bottle should be okay for the entire day.
A concentration of between 50 and 100 parts per million allows for sanitizing to occur without toxicity. The solution should be in contact with the surface for at least 7 seconds. One way is to apply with a cloth or spray and let air dry. There are special test strips that can be used to double-check the concentrations are correct. To achieve the concentration, 1 tablespoon of bleach per gallon of warm water between 55 and 115 degrees Fahrenheit is a recipe to follow for traditional bleaches, which have about 6% hypochlorite. Bleach can now be purchased as the concentrated 8.25% active ingredient solution or in the traditional 6% active ingredient solution. When using the 6% bleach, use 1 tablespoon of bleach with 1 gallon of water. For the 8.25% bleach, use 2 teaspoons of bleach with 1 gallon of water to achieve the desired concentration of 50 to 100 parts per million. Scented or splashless versions of bleach are not to be used.
Quats can be purchased through a wholesale supplier and have some advantages as noted. But be careful when purchasing these, as some are concentrations intended for custodial purposes, like toilet seats, and are too strong for food contact areas. Check the label to be sure it is approved for food contact use. The concentration will vary, but generally it shouldn't be higher than 220 parts per million. There is a special type of test strip for Quats. It is different than the one used for chlorine. Remember that there are many opportunities for food to become unsafe while in the custody of your organization. Everyone has to pay attention to what they are doing and how they are doing it when they purchase food, store food, assemble, cook, or handle food, and when serving. Everyone should watch that foods are not temperature abused or become contaminated from poor employee practices or unclean surfaces. Remember, it is your food event and therefore your responsibility. Each person involved has an important job. The Office of Risk Management and the Food Safety Project team of Iowa State University Extension and Outreach can provide technical assistance as you plan for the food event and execute your plan. Good luck.